Well, homophobia still spans a broad spectrum of our world today, forcing many members of the gay community to feel rejected and alone.
Dean Hamer and Joe Wilson have a personal story to share in a thought-provoking documentary film. It's called Out in the Silence, a documentary that focuses on campaigning for fairness and equality. Gentlemen, thanks very much for coming in. Appreciate you being here. This is based upon your own experience, right?
It is. We decided to get married 5 years ago, and even though we live here in the capital of the free world in Washington, D.C., that was impossible to do here. It was not legal to get married. So we had to go up to Canada. But when we did get married, we wanted to do what people normally do, which is let our friends and relatives back home know. So I put an announcement in the New York Times. I'm from that area. And Joe put an announcement in his hometown paper.
Which is?
It's called The Derrick, and the town is called Oil City, Pennsylvania.
Which has a different mentality than New York City, I'm guessing.
Quite.
What was the reaction there?
The reaction was mixed, but what happened initially was there was a slew of criticism and negative letters to the editor in the paper about the paper even daring to publish something like this.
So you had no thoughts of making this film until this reaction bubbled up, right?
Right. We, living here in Washington, D.C., were watching the reaction from a distance, primarily in the paper, and we're, amused, outraged, etc. when we saw the things taking place in the paper. But what really grabbed us was 8 months later when we got a letter from the mother of a gay teen in the Oil City area who said, "My son is experiencing horrible problems and abuse at high school. I don't know what to do. Can you help?" So we took our first journey up to Oil City with our cameras and met with that family, and that began a journey that took 3 years and is now a film that we're using as a tool to help people deal with these issues.
I'm curious what ultimately happened to that 18-year-old.
So he and his mother really courageously stood up in a very challenging environment and said, we need to bring this to an end, like at the school board meetings and other community forums. And it was very difficult for them. Ultimately, the ACLU supported them and challenged the school district to...
And how about the classmates? Did any of them ever turn around? The people who were criticizing or
in a lot of places, there were actually a lot of kids who were friendly and who were supportive, some who were not. And what really made a difference is in the attitude of the administration and the teachers, whether they were going to allow harassment to occur or whether they were going to help kids be more supportive. So this kid, his name is CJ, he's a wonderful kid. He's a football player, a jock. He's got a lot of friends, and he wants to stay in that area, and that's exactly what he's doing. And the question really is how to make an environment at the school and in the entire community that will allow him to stay there and live a full life.
So, Dean, you were the photographer, right?
I'm the cameraman.
Yes. Okay, so you were doing this kind of on-the-shoulder cinema verite kind of thing, where you're getting these raw reactions, it's just rolling and everything's unscripted. What were you able to capture?
We captured a lot. What I think was most amazing was the courageous behavior of this teen and his friends, and them just being teenagers, just normal kids. I think the other amazing story was that we went and interviewed some of the people that wrote really negative letters. One of them was a fundamentalist preacher. And the first time we went to his house, his wife looked at us and said, well, if you do plumbing, you know that you can't plumb a house with all male parts. There have to be male parts and female parts. And I'm sitting there with a camera going, she didn't just say that, did she? But 3 years later, after they actually got to know us and we got to know them a little bit better, I was there and lucky enough to be filming it as this fundamentalist preacher talked about how he'd really changed his views and how he still had his religious beliefs, but he understood that denigrating gay people from the pulpit could actually hurt people like CJ. So that was a pretty amazing transformation.
Did he change his preaching?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the significant transformation for us with them, and what they did shows other people what's possible. So this couple, Pastor Mark Nicholas and his wife Diana, actually now travel with us to screenings in rural areas and small towns around Pennsylvania and have conversations with audiences just about how we need to build bridges across these differences in our communities.
Well, the preacher situation raises an interesting question, and it goes to a very difficult question that is at the heart of many people who are religious. And it is, how do you balance your rights to get married and live the life that you want to with the teachings of virtually all of the world's major religions for time immemorial?
I think we don't really want to get into the theological arguments at all. There are many religions that think it's perfectly fine to be gay. But that's not our issue. That's for people of religion to discuss with themselves. Our issue is the basic, fundamental civil rights that all Americans have and that we are granted by our Constitution, and protecting those. If people want to have religious beliefs, great. but just don't interfere with our fundamental civil rights, our right to be free, to be liberated, and to seek happiness in the way that we want to. That's our view, I think.
So, Joe, tell us about this movie as kind of a vehicle to open up dialogue on this important issue.
It's the most important aspect of this project for us. I mean, the courage and the inspiration that the characters in the film provide help us open up conversations like that in rural areas of small towns now across the country. And we're being very proactive with this. We are trying to go to those places like public libraries, colleges, and universities in these areas where everybody is supposed to be welcome and everybody comes to have important dialogue about these challenging issues.
Because let's face it, it's not just this little town in Pennsylvania. It could be anywhere USA, right? Where
Well, as we know, sitting here in the studio in the state of Virginia, these are very front and center issues here with the election of Governor McDonnell and Attorney General Cuccinelli. These issues are front and center in the state of Virginia right now. We need to have these conversations about our ability to, just live openly and freely in the places we want to call home.
The President of the United States has said that he's opposed to gay marriage. It's not given a lot of press, but that's a fact. 2/3 of Americans are opposed to gay marriage if the polls are accurate. And I think there's a kind of a demographic shift as the young people seem to be more and more accepting of it rather. Worldwide, there's much less acceptance of it. And I saw recently a clip, and I'm just curious what your views are of this. We've begun negotiations, or want to begin negotiations with the Islamic State of Iran right now. I saw a YouTube clip just the other day of 5 young gay men pushed onto the back of a pickup truck, the bed of a pickup truck, with nooses around the neck. The truck drives off and they're left swinging in the breeze. 4 handsome young gay men. This is the way gay people are treated in Iran, a country that we want to negotiate.
Right. Now, so this is obviously not only about marriage equality in this country, but just the right of all people to live freely and openly wherever they want to be. Now, we hear horrible stories everywhere we go, and every audience somebody stands up and says, "This is my experience." Recently, related to the example you just gave, a young man sat in our audience after screening and said, "When I came out to my father in junior high school as gay, he put me in the trunk of the car. He told me he had 5 minutes to get my stuff together, put me in the trunk of the car, drove me to another relative's house where the family gathered and sat him down and said, if you exhibit any gay behavior, you will be killed." This is the reality in this country.
By his family.
By his own
family.
Yes, and this is not an unusual story. So I think the conversations we're trying to raise in our communities is, how do we create places where people can live, survive, thrive, be part of their families, have jobs, et cetera, as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or any difference.
So the message is one of tolerance then.
It's not tolerance, it's one of acceptance. And equality.
Equality.
Yeah,
Okay.
equality.
This summer, we're all going to be able to see this movie, right?
Yes, you
'Cause,
are. Yeah.
It's going to be available on
So
PBS?
the film is going to be available on PBS stations across the country, but it's also available now on Amazon and iTunes and at Barnes & Noble and many other places.
And then coming up in June, a big event for you.
Huge
In New
event
York?
for us. Yes, this film was just selected to screen at the Human Rights Watch International Film Festival, which takes place at Lincoln Center in New York in June. And we think that's exciting just because it helps to frame these issues in the context of the human rights movement.
Right. Gentlemen, thanks very much for your courage. Thanks for your film. And we
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing it.
We sure
Thanks
do.
very much.
Good to be here.